We're previewing Monday Night Football with special guest DaEntertainah coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a live edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina, and happy to have you with us on this special Sunday. We are previewing Monday Night Football. We're talking Giants, and as promised, I am joined by the one and only DaEntertainah, Chris Guzzo. Chris, my friend, thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday morning with me. This is so exciting. I can't wait for this to get kicked off.
I appreciate you for having me on. I had a lot of fun talking with you last week about the state of the New York Giants. Obviously, we got a big game coming up this week. We are 3-6, but if we win, maybe you feel a little bit differently about the New York Giants going forward. So always get up for a game going up against Tom Brady.
Absolutely. And a lot of history there. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some things Giants. And of course, those of you who are watching us live, feel free to send your questions in. We'll check them in and we'll sprinkle them in throughout the show. We're going to go maybe about an hour or so, depending on how things go. Lots to talk about. And, if you're not following Chris on Twitter, make sure you give him a follow. I have his Twitter account there at the bottom, always tweeting out some great stats, some information. And of course, he has his own podcast that I encourage you to check out. So, all right, Chris, I got to talk about a couple of things. I started to put together what I call a Monday morning musings column for Giants Country, which is where I write. And I don't normally like to call for people's jobs because, I tend to be kind of on the patient side. I tend to be kind of, look at the different circumstances. But there are a couple guys that I just think are falling way short of the mark. And I want to start there. And I got to start with Dave Gettleman, specific to what he hasn't been able to do with the offensive line. And let's just start there because I know you posted a great stat about Daniel Jones and what he's been able to do despite that offensive line. Let's start with Gettleman. I mean, he spoke about fixing that line. I know he's tried. It hasn't been done. Is that a fireable offense, do you think, for Gettleman?
Yes. And like I said the last time we talked, I've been a person that's been like you. I'm very much like you in the sense that I'm patient. I want to see things play out. I want to give everybody a fair opportunity, especially with the situation that Gettleman inherited, which I didn't think was a very good one. But this offseason, I thought it was blatantly obvious when you had as bad of an offensive line as we've had his first 3 years being here and the last 6 or 7 years before he got here, for him to lose his most accomplished offensive lineman in Zeitler and not replace him and not do anything to try to rebuff this offensive line and just depend on guys like Shane Lemieux and Matt Parrott and obviously bad luck with Lemieux getting hurt, but Matt Parrott didn't get hurt. He got beat out by Nate Solder. And for you not to address the offensive line at all this entire offseason, yes. And I think it was obvious, Pat, before the year started that Gettleman and Judge, I want to include both because I do think they work collaboratively, came to the conclusion, maybe we did mess up with our evaluation in terms of not trying to address the offensive line this entire offseason when they were scrambling to pick up scrap heap offensive linemen the best they could. We had to trade B.J. Hill to get Billy Price, picking up Matt Skura. So I think it was obvious that the Giants realized about 2 weeks before the season started that they were in big trouble in terms of having depth on that offensive line.
Now, let's take a look. I'm going to see if I can put a graphic up here real quick. This has been the starting offensive line combinations. This is from the Giants media notes here. They've had, what is it, about 7 different combinations, I think?
Looks about maybe even more, actually.
Starting combinations, not even counting the ones that they've had in-game when they've had to make adjustments and stuff like that. I mean, amongst this group here, other than for Andrew Thomas, are there any keepers, do you think?
Nope.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Gates, I know, is a fan favorite. I like Nick Gates. I like his attitude. And if he comes back healthy, which I think is a huge question mark at this point in time of whether or not he's even going to be near the same player. Could potentially be a starting capable offensive lineman. And Will Hernandez, I think, like we said last time, he's at least borderline, but I don't know if they're going to be able to retain him, obviously, due to salary implications. And, he's an okay lineman. But the only guy that really stands out to me is Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, and I agree. And you had, I guess you had gotten this from Pro Football Focus, the different
Yeah.
grades of the offensive lineman. Not very good. I
No,
mean,
no,
that is
that's an
scary.
understatement.
That is really scary looking. And I'm, disclaimer, I don't understand how Pro Football Focus grades, and I think grades are subjective, but you look at the eye test here and oh my goodness. Wow, right?
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at a line like the Cowboys, I didn't put it up there. I almost did because I don't want to depress Giants fans. All their linemen are like 80 or better. You look at the Cleveland Browns; it's pretty much the same thing. It's not just this year, Pat. It's been for 12 years. With the state of affair with this offensive line.
Yeah, and I just don't understand what the big deal is with fixing it. I mean, I know he tried to. I want to make that clear. He tried to fix it, but you question some of the moves and some of the thinking here, and it was almost like all right. You mentioned Shane Lemieux. He was a fifth round pick. Well, David Deal, I think, was a fifth round pick back in the day as well, and they lucked out kind of with him.
Yeah, he's
So, I
great.
mean, I don't know. Were they maybe trying to catch lightning in a bottle again?
Listen, of course there's going to be instances, and I have this conversation with people all the time on my channel. Of course, there's going to be instances where you could find where teams get value late in the draft with the offensive lineman. But at the same time, Pat, when the line's been as bad as it's been, conventional wisdom would tell you not just at the tackle position, at the guard position, whatever else, you're going to have a higher success rate if you try to address it earlier in the draft. So that's my take on it. I think it's been the primary problem for this team for years. And fix it and go out there and do the best that you can to fix it. And that's why I was I don't even want to say a Gettleman fan, but like supporting Gettleman in what he was trying to do, because up until this year, I did think that he was at least making it a focal point to fix the line. He just didn't follow through this year at all.
Yeah, which was surprising, Now, you also posted this other stat here with Daniel Jones, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but I found this absolutely amazing that, despite the fact he's had a questionable offensive line, despite the fact his playmakers have been in and out of the lineup, this is not bad production, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, by no means am I saying that Daniel Jones is elite. And I know Giants. I think a lot of Giants fans just assume that elite quarterbacks grow on trees. They don't. They're elite for a reason. You might find an elite quarterback once every 4 or 5 drafts, and that's if you hit on him, and that's if you're picking in the right spot to select him. I'm not saying Daniel Jones is elite, but in my opinion, he's certainly a capable quarterback, and I think he's displayed that this year, especially given the circumstance. And all we heard going into this season by a lot of people about Daniel Jones was he's so inconsistent. One week he's going to give you a great game, then he's going to give you 3 horrible games. I don't feel that's been the case with Jones this year, especially when you factor in all the surrounding help around him. I think Daniel Jones has put forth at least an average effort in the majority of games this year. Has he been extraordinary? No. I think he's had 2 or 3 games where he's really gone above and beyond in terms of putting the team on his back, but he certainly has not lost this games, and he's outside of the Rams game, of course. And he's gone above and beyond in at least 2 or 3 games. We should have absolutely won the Washington game, and he was by far the primary reason. Darius Slayton holds on to the football. Daniel Jones suddenly has one of the greatest statistical games probably in New York Giants history. Like, you think about that game, Pat, I think he would have been I forgot what the statistical accomplishment was. I think it was 4 total touchdowns, 300 yards, and 100 rushing yards had the CJ Board penalty not occurred and had Darius Slayton held on to the football, which was kind of a phantom penalty call on CJ Board. So I thought he played great in that game. He played great in the Saints game. And there was another game, if I'm forgetting off the top of my head, where I thought he played really well. I think it was maybe the Panthers game when he didn't have any help at all. And I thought he did a great job in terms of putting the team on his back. But overall, I think Jones has at least been average in the majority of games this year. And for people that want to point the finger at him, I think they're not looking over all the other variables, that being the offensive line and that, of course, being Jason Garrett.
Yes, and speaking of the offensive line, I want to post a comment here that we got. And again, those of you who are watching us live, feel free to drop your comments in. They are showing up, as well as your questions, and we will get to them throughout the show as they come up. This one from Neil about questioning the move in 2018 to take Saquon instead of Quentin Nelson or quarterback. All right, quarterback, hindsight's 2020 on that, but Quentin Nelson. Now, at the time when Gettleman made that move, I understood why. You had Eli Manning. He had thrown for over 600 attempts in 3 straight years. He was getting up there in age. The feeling was, let's get him a running game, get him a legitimate weapon, and maybe we take some of the onus off of him. But that being said, I thought that was a short term solution, and it didn't really address the possibility that, okay, in a year or two, Eli's going to not be here. We better make sure that we have everything in place for the new quarterback. That, to me, I think was the biggest mistake that Dave Gettleman has made since coming here, is that they did not have an offensive line for Daniel Jones. They didn't have sufficient weapons in place for him. They had the running game with Saquon. He's been hurt, but that's why I think Daniel Jones, just my take, maybe has been a little slow coming out of the box. And then you throw in the changes in the coaching staff, just a whole mixture of false steps, if you will.
Yeah, I listen. 2018, in hindsight, was a disaster. Gettleman and the Giants basically admitted it, that it was. I will go to the grave thinking that it was more Mara influence than Gettleman influence. That's just honestly how I feel. I really felt that Mara wanted to give Eli Manning another shot to win a championship, and he viewed Saquon Barkley as that immediate impact player, and the Giants tried to address both the playmaker and the offensive line in the same offseason, which you should never do. Obviously by drafting Will Hernandez and signing Nate Solder to a mega contract. The only way, in my opinion, and I'm a huge Saquon Barkley fan, he's my favorite player on the team, but the only way the Saquon Barkley pick would have made sense, picking him that high, and by no means am I discounting Saquon Barkley as a player. Any expert tells you he's the best player in that draft. He would have went fourth to the Browns had the New York Giants not taken him. And had he went to the Browns, a lot of Giants fans would have been complaining that we didn't take him. Because I'm going to tell you what, he would have been a superstar on the Cleveland Browns behind that offensive line. So it's easy to be a Monday morning GM, but it was the wrong pick. And it was the wrong pick because we did not have an offensive line established, and we couldn't maximize the potential of Saquon Barkley. And a running back, we all know, is a short shelf life. Running backs are only going to play at a high level up until the age of 27, 28, maybe 29 on average. And Barkley already is maybe about approaching 25. So, and we still have not fixed the offensive line. So it just did not add up in terms of drafting a skill position player that early in the draft when we didn't have the pieces around him to maximize his potential. And I put that obviously on Gettleman. And like I said, I think it's Mara influence. But that was a big, big mistake. They should have traded down. They should have thought long-term. They should have started the rebuild in 2018.
Absolutely. And now, keeping with that, let's get a question in here from Jay Seward, who asks, do you think Daniel is gun shy this early in his career like Eli was later in his career because of the poor offensive line? I'll start with you. I know what I think here, but I'll ask you first, Chris.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't know if it's just the offensive line. Part of me thinks that Judge and Garrett have really instilled in Daniel Jones's head. We want to make sure we're not turning the football over. We want to make sure we play fundamentally sound football. We know the defense is our strength. Maybe that has something to do with it. But for sure, I mean, when you feel you have no blindside protection and you got a mental clock in your head, I'm going to get rocked in a second or two. I got to get the ball out. Of course, that's going to impact you as a quarterback. We saw it impact Eli Manning throughout the final 6 or 7 years of his career. And I think we see a different quarterback. And I hope, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this during the live stream with Andrew Thomas being back, but I think we see a different quarterback when Andrew Thomas is in the game because Daniel Jones feels like he could rely on that blindside protection. When he's not in there, he knows he's got to get rid of that ball real quick.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I saw a stat, and I don't remember if you posted it or where I saw it, but Daniel is a totally different quarterback with Andrew Thomas in there. And you're right, because he knows, I think there's a trust level that Andrew can batten down that blind side. And for a quarterback who as it is, sometimes his processing clock is kind of off a little bit, to have that reassurance that, okay, my left tackle's got my back, I don't have to worry about it. And it's just, I think that's a huge, huge factor. So, Jay, thank you for that question. Now, Chris, I was doing some research this morning before we started this broadcast, And I was looking at the Giants' red zone offense, and I'm going to put some graphics on the screen. Yes, this is not pleasant, folks. So let me just find it real quick. I think this is it. Okay. Red zone passing. I know this might be a little small, but what I was basically looking at is what have the Giants been doing in the red zone? Because if we're talking about guys who I don't know if they're going to be here next year, we got to talk about Jason Garrett. That's our segue into
I know
this.
he won't be here next year.
I would agree with you on this. But I was looking at these numbers, okay? And I know this is a little off and I apologize for the formatting here. But look at the red zone targets and look at the production in the passing game. When I saw this, I mean, okay, the tight ends have a touchdown. I think Dante Pettis has a touchdown, but none for Shepard. Tony, I don't believe, has a touchdown. Um, Ross doesn't. None for Galladay. I'm sitting here and I'm going, how is this possible? I don't get it.
I think a lot of it falls on Garrett. I mean, you look at Pat Shermer, who everybody wanted to run out of town, understandably so, wasn't a great head coach. But you want to look at the red zone specifically, which in my opinion is probably the most important aspect of an offense. That is where you decide whether or not you settle for 3 or you put up 6. Under Shermer, they had more red zone touchdowns in just 2019 than they've had with Garrett since he's been here. In 25 games, they have 30 red zone touchdowns under Garrett. They had 31 with Shermer just in 2019, and that's with the same quarterback. That's with the same crappy offensive line. That's with worse weapons. So I think a lot of it definitely is, especially in the red zone. I think that's when a play caller really comes into effect in terms of being able to scheme guys open in a condensed space. When you're inside the 10, inside the 20, it becomes a lot harder, obviously, to get open because you don't have as much of a field to play with. And I think better play callers scheme up their players to get open more so than guys that maybe are not quite as innovative. Now, of course, if the Giants had a run game, it would certainly help Garrett. I don't think it's all on Garrett. The fact that they can't run block certainly doesn't help. But the red zone offense is just beyond pathetic. And the fact that Kadarius Toney and Kenny Galladay have less points as Giants than Andrew Thomas speaks volumes.
Yes. And you mentioned the run game. Let me just show you the run game in the red zone here. A little bit better, which to me kind of screams almost conservative. I mean, not too bad. And I broke it down into inside the 20 and inside the 10 here. Not horrible, but you spent all this money on these playmakers, and you're telling me you can't figure out how to get them the ball? I what am I missing here?
I think it's not just one. I don't think it's just Garrett, but if you ask me what's the primary problem in terms of, especially in the red zone, I think I would say Garrett 1, I'd say offensive line 2, but I think a lot of it has to fall in the play caller, and I've been as fair as I can be with Garrett since he's been here, but this year, I mean, he has not won me over at all. He's done a bad job in terms of trying to orchestrate touchdowns inside the 20. He's done a horrible job.
Yes, indeed. All right. Let's take a quick break here. I do have to run a couple of sponsor ads. We'll be right back, folks. Get those questions in. Chris and I are happy to answer your questions. So go ahead and drop them in if you're watching us live, and we'll get to a few of them coming up in the next few segments. Hey, Giant fans. Today I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle. DirecTV Stream brings you live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, which means you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. And the best part is there's no annual contract, so stop waiting and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. All right, folks, you got Patricia Traina here. Traina and the Entertainer. That kind of rhymes. I like that. Awesome. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you are enjoying our live broadcast, and I hope you are dropping your questions in. Matter of fact, let's see if we have some questions in here. I know I've got a couple that came in via email that we'll get to. Let me see if we have any questions here. Just scrolling through here. I know, actually, let me get to the ones that I know we got via email, because Renato P., who's a regular listener of the LockedOn Giants podcast, he's from Brazil. always sends in like 3 questions at a time, and they're really awesome. So let's get his first question up and we'll answer that. Okay. So he asked, the NFL media from Brazil doesn't like the trio of Dave Gettleman, Judge, and Jones. They believe the 3 of them out next year. Does the U.S. media share the same beliefs, or are they more towards only Dave Gettleman leaving the team? All right. Chris, I think Gettleman, one way or another, will not be back next year, whether they call it a retirement, whether they call it a mutual agreement to part ways. As we discussed earlier, I don't think Dave Gettleman is back next year. I mean, unless this team makes a miraculous run to the Super Bowl, then I could see that maybe, another year. But like we talked about, 4 years to fix the offensive line, and somebody else brought up on the chat, the pass rush is still kind of a little bit of an issue there. How much longer can you go with this? At some point, you got to just say, all right, you know what? Maybe we've got to rethink this and go in a different direction. Now, Joe Judge, I think he is back next year. I think Daniel Jones is back next year because I'm not so sure. I'm a big fan of the quarterback class in the draft. And I know a lot of people early on have said the quarterback class next year is not the greatest. Ideally, yes, you want to sweep everybody out at the same time if you make a change at GM. And then, the logic is change the GM, change the head coach, change the quarterback. I don't think that's going to be the case. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for sure. Outside of the Giants going on a great run and winning 9 games, I think Gettleman is gone for sure. Maybe 8 games it becomes a discussion, but if you're asking me right now, yes, I think Gettleman's gone. And I think the failure to address the offensive line is proof enough to make a change at this point in time. It was his focal point when he took the job. That's all I heard as a fan, and that's what I was excited about because it's what I've been screaming about for 12 years. And he comes in, oh, we're going to get the hog mileage, we're going to fix the line, we're going to win in the trenches. Hasn't done it. So I think that alone is a fireable offense to get him out of here outside, like I said, of them winning 9 games. So I think no matter what, Gettleman more than likely will be relieved of duty, whether it be him retiring or him being fired. Judge and Jones obviously is up for interpretation. If they bring in an outside GM, it obviously leaves it up for debate because if you're going to give the outside GM full say in terms of what he wants to do, he could decide to move on from the head coach and the quarterback. He absolutely could. Do I think it would be a wise decision specifically with Daniel Jones? No. The only way I think it would be a decent decision to move on from Daniel Jones, this is the only, scenario where I think it would be at least acceptable. I wouldn't draft a quarterback like you said. I'm not forcing a quarterback in a weak quarterback draft class. However, if I'm a new GM coming in and I say to myself, okay, I think Daniel Jones is a pretty good quarterback. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be the guy that's here when we start to get good because I don't know if he's going to be worthy of that second contract. And they get an offer by a team like, say, the New Orleans Saints. Say the New Orleans Saints, they're picking late in the draft. They're like, we need a quarterback, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, whoever. They offer you a late first round pick, a late second round pick, whatever, and you can bring in a stopgap to fill that void for a year or two before you draft your next quarterback. I suppose that's an option. But if you ask me right now what I think they're going to do, I think Judge will be back. I think Jones will be back. I think they'll run it back for at least another year and try to get this thing situated. But Gettleman will definitely be relieved of duty. The only question I have at the GM spot at that point is it an in-house hire or is it somebody from the outside?
Oh, I hope it's not an in-house hire. I mean, that's what they have done.
Yeah.
And, if you're appointing a Gettleman lieutenant or deputy or whatever you want to call him, you might as well just keep Gettleman because the thinking is usually the same. I mean, there's a little variation, but if I'm the Giants and I have to make that decision, I go outside. I cast a wider net. Because think about it. The last time they did the GM search, who did they interview? They interviewed Gettleman, who they knew,
Yeah.
Mark Ross, who they knew. Louis Riddick, I think, was the only outside guy, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't a huge net. And at some point, you got to say, okay, I get this. There's a comfort level. I totally get it. I like working with people that I know. But at the same time, I'm not afraid to go and take a chance on someone I don't know because you never know. You might find a gem.
Mhm.
So, and I don't think the Giants have done that. And, it's mind boggling.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think Louis Riddick will definitely be part of the interview process if they're electing to go with an outside guy. And he's clearly trying to set himself up for it. with some of the things that he said about the Giants over the last couple of years. And we'll see if he becomes that. But I'm with you. I want an outsider. I want a young, innovative mind. I want a guy in here that's going to come in here and shake things up if they elect to go that route. I have my doubts, though, especially if Mara is going to force Judge on the next GM. At that point, I don't know if it's the right decision to even bring in an outsider, because I think you limit your hiring candidates. And I want Judge back, by the way, and I would hope if they brought in an outsider, he would want to give Judge at least another year to try to get things situated. But obviously, if you go that route, you don't know if you're going to give him full say in terms of what he wants to do.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's take another question from one of our viewers here. This is from Jay. Why do you think we got away from using Daniel more in the run game, such as play action or rollouts? I would think probably the fact that Daniel can sometimes be a little reckless in running and not sliding and just trying to lower his head and get that extra yard. I would think that has something to do with it. I mean, what do you think, Chris?
I think the concussion does too.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think when they played Dallas, I think they were running him a little bit more. But I'm with you. I've said that since he's came into the NFL. You watch players like Russell Wilson, you watch players like Kyler Murray, and they're just natural runners. Like, they know how to get down. They have that, especially Murray, because he has that baseball background. They know when to get down. They know when to slide. They know when to get out of bounds. Daniel Jones he's basically like a track star. Like, he straight line speed, he could run fast. But in terms of anticipation, in terms of side to side quickness, being smart when he's running with the football, knowing when to get down, having that feel, he just doesn't have it. And I think the Giants are probably worried about their quarterback's health, and they're probably trying to limit turnovers. A lot of his fumbles have come when he's tried to run the football. But this week, I do expect them to try to utilize Jones a lot. I'm not going to say a lot more, but a little bit more in the ground game, because the Bucs run defense is good. I think the Giants are going to have to get creative. And I do think they'll try to use Jones's legs a little bit this week.
Yeah, and plus the Bucks defense, the run defense is missing Vita Vea.
Yeah.
So, so they're banged up front. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Bucks coming up. Let's get another question up here. This is from Oscar Rodriguez. How do you feel about Riley Dixon? That's a guy who a lot of people don't talk about. Riley Dixon, to me, has just been inconsistent. I mean, some days he's good, and then some days, it's like, when was the last time we got a full game out of Riley Dixon where all his punts were solid?
Riley Dixon obviously was a great punter 2 years ago when he made
Mhm.
the Pro Bowl. Last year, not a lot of people talked about it, but he wasn't very good. And this year he's been bad. And one thing that I've said a lot over the last couple of weeks, I would actually draft a punter in this year's
Mm.
upcoming draft, like the last pick. But I would draft a punter because I would cut Dixon. You save like $3.5 million if you do that. And if you draft a punter in the 7th round, you're paying him next to nothing. So I think that's what I would do if I was the Giants general manager next year. Riley Dixon simply just isn't worth $4 million a year. He's just not. He's been incredibly underwhelming. And that you expected that to be one of the strengths of this football team, punt coverage, things like that over the last 2 years, and it just hasn't been.
Yes, totally agree. Absolutely. And I was surprised that they didn't do something with his contract this year, to be honest with you, because I thought for sure he was a target when they
Yeah, they
were
could have saved
spending
money if
out of
they cut him
control.
this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were spending out, and next year they are really going to be tight under that cap. They're going to have to cut guys, and I could see maybe Dixon, if he continues on the path that he's been, not being here next year. So, all right, let's look at another question here. We'll spend in this segment answering a few questions here. Why do you think Judge deserves a third year when McAdoo made the playoffs and Shermer were fired after 2 years? What's the difference? Let me weigh in here first.
Yeah,
Number
yeah.
one, McAdoo lost the locker room. I mean, that's plain and simple. I don't care about the playoffs. He lost the locker room the year after. And P.S., I think McAdoo benefited and made the playoffs more so because Spagnuolo was able to get a lot out of that defense,
And
as
because
opposed
Jerry
to,
Reese went on a spending spree.
yeah. And they also went on a spending spree, which, by the way, collapsed, all right, and left them in cap hell. And that's, when Dave Gettleman came in, they were able to clean that up. And now, of course, they're right back to where they were when Gettleman came in, with cap hell
Yeah.
on the horizon. Shermer, he just, there were a lot of little things. Number one, I don't think Shermer had a good coaching staff. I will go to my grave saying that and believing that. He did not have a good coaching staff. Judge, I think, has a little bit better coaching staff. Now, will there be tweaks that need to be made? Absolutely. But I think Joe has an idea of how to get to where he wants to be. Now he's learning that there are certain things that worked in Alabama and New England that don't work here with the Giants because it's a different group. But I think Joe has a clue, at least so far from what I've seen. I think that's why he gets a third year. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah. First, I'm going to say McAdoo, they had to fire him. Like you said, they completely lost the locker room. His handling of Eli Manning was a disgrace. And I think it was kind of like spitting in the face of the Giants because he didn't like the way that they probably said that he couldn't draft a quarterback. But you don't do that as a head coach. And I thought his handling of that and the fact that he lost the locker room over the last 4 or 5 weeks, to me, that's still the most embarrassing season since I've been watching the New York Giants. That team the year after they made the playoffs. So Ben McAdoo had to be fired. I thought Shermer deserved the third year. So I am not one of the people that thought he should have been out after 2. I've said on record I would have brought Shermer back because he drafted Daniel Jones. He was not a very good head coach. Judge, when you brought him in, you knew it was going to be a process. He's a young guy. He's 38 years old. He's never had a history of being a head coach. Do I think he's done a good job? No, not this year. I think he's made a lot of questionable decisions. I think he's cost us at least one game in terms of his decision making. But then the other thing I asked myself, Pat, is this. Think about it from the eyes of a head coach candidate. If you're a head coach candidate and you're a good one, because that's what we want as New York Giants fans, we don't want another Pat Shermer. We don't want another hand-me-down. We don't want it. Of course, somebody's going to take the job, but we want the best guy to want the job. Otherwise, why are you going to make a coaching change, right? So if I'm a head coaching candidate that's going to be on the market next year, and I look at it and I say, okay, let me look at what the Giants have done with their previous head coaches. McAdoo, they fired him after 2 years. Okay. Pat Shermer, they fired him after 2 years, and they fired him after they only gave him 1 year with a quarterback in his rookie season. Interesting. Joe Judge, they brought in a 38-year-old head coach, and they fired him after 2 years. I don't know if I'm going to have stability if I take this job, and the Giants don't have a very good roster to begin with. So that's what I look at it like. You have to also think about it from trying to attract the best candidates from the outside, and I don't think it's a very desirable job. I would give Judge another year.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with Alvin there. He hasn't. Judge has done some things that I'm questioning, and last year, really, the only thing I questioned with Judge is when they rushed Daniel Jones back to the game or to play after he was coming off the injuries. This year, I did not like how Judge approached training camp. I thought that cost the Giants a fast start with the way he handled it. That drove me crazy. Some of the in-game decisions, like you talked about, I think have cost them games and yardage and timeouts and all that stuff. So yeah, it just seems like they've regressed a little bit as a group, and that's ultimately falls on Joe. But that said, Joe isn't going to let grass grow under his feet. I think he's going to address that. He's going to fix it. You kind of listen to him talk, especially, I mentioned how he handled training camp, and you kind of heard almost like a little bit of regret in some of what he had to say. Like if he had to go back and do it over a different way, he would have. So I give him credit for that. There are some coaches that, they're willing to die on that hill, if you will. I don't think he's one of those coaches that is willing to die on it and say, okay, it's my way and I don't care, this way's worked before, and it's just gonna that's how it's gonna be. So that's how I feel about him.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm far from sold on Judge. Obviously, I want to root for him. He seems like a smart guy, seems like a good guy. But he's got a lot of growing up to do. But
mhm.
I'm just not in favor of making 3 coaching changes after 2 years.
Uh,
Now, of course, like I said, if you bring an outside GM, I want him to have full say. So if he wants to make a coaching change, you do it. But if say they hired me, which would never happen, I would keep it intact for another year.
Never say never. You never know. So
Hey, in today's day and age, you never know.
you never know. I mean,
You
they
got
could hire
YouTube
me,
stars
right? Not that I would take
fighting,
the job.
you got YouTube stars fighting like famous boxers. So you never know.
All right, we got another question here as we devote this segment to your questions. So please type them in, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. LA Sports wants to know, other than Andrew Thomas, Aziz Ojulari, Xavier McKinney, Kadarius Toney, who is part of the long-term New York Giants' future 2 to 3 years down the road? I think you got to throw in Saquon and Daniel for sure.
Really?
Um,
You think Saquon is part of
well,
3 years running?
here's why. Hear me out on this one. I think because they picked up Saquon's option year. and it's going to cost them $3 million less than what it's costing them now. So the thinking, from what I understand it, is let's see what this guy could potentially do if he can get a full year in healthy. Then, so I'm thinking, for sure next year, and then they can always, if they want to, they can franchise him if he has a good year. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though I don't want to see them give him a gross, monstrous contract. I think that would be a mistake. I think if they can come up with a reasonable deal to keep him, I wouldn't have a problem with him if he is healthy. That's the caveat here. Daniel Jones, as we talked about this year, the quarterback class in the draft is not really like, wow, got to have this guy. Um, so you stick with him. He goes into his fourth year. His option year will get picked up next year. I'd be surprised if it's not.
Yeah.
He's going to be here for a couple of years. All right. And if he continues to trend upward with a different offensive coordinator, which I do believe is coming, you keep him. It's that simple. So those are two guys that just off the top of my head, I think you potentially look at. Galladay, I think, is going to be here because of the
Has to be.
contract.
Yeah.
I think he's got the guaranteed money, and I'm just trying to think. Tight end, they're going to have to address. I mean, no way. I see Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph long term in this offense. So, and then offensive line. Well, Andrew Thomas they talked about. Other than that, I'm not so sure there's anybody on the offensive line that I could sit here and say he'll be here 2 or 3 years down the line. So let's cover offense here first. What are your takes?
On offense, long term,
Yes.
Andrew Thomas for sure. That's a lock. As long as the guy could stay healthy, I'm hoping the guy's here for the next decade. Tony's a rookie, so obviously he'll be here for at least 3 more years, and you hope he continues to mature as a player. So those two for sure on the offense. Galladay, 2 more years at least after this year, and then they have the option to cut him if he's still getting injured or regressing, but he'll be here for at least 2 years. Anybody else on that offensive line, nothing's a lock. So Barkley, to me, he'll definitely be here next year. There's no doubt about it for me from that aspect. Then I think it gets dicey. Depends on how he plays. Depends if he can stay healthy. If he stays healthy, I could see the Giants franchise tagging him or maybe signing him to a more cost-effective contract extension than we may have thought a year or two ago. That's definitely in the cards, but he'll certainly be here for at least 1 more year. Daniel Jones, I think for sure gets a 4th year, and I absolutely think they pick up the 5th year option, like you said, and will more than likely have 2 years with the Giants if they don't like to trade him, if they want to draft a quarterback in the following draft. So I'll say Jones has at least a year, probably 2. Barkley at least a year. Thomas is definitely going to be here long term. Tony's definitely going to be here long term. Yeah, and yeah, that's what I'd say about the offense.
Okay, now let's talk about the defense. I mean, all right. So Aziz, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Leonard Williams because of the contract. I don't remember. I know Williams has a shorter contract than usual, but I think he's got some guaranteed money that will keep him around here. I would think Xavier McKinney for sure. Blake Martinez, I think I could see him if he's healthy. I think they're missing him, so I could see him back. I'm not so sure James Bradbury is back. I mean, he's got a huge, huge cap hit next year. I wonder if they keep him next year, or if they just, say, okay, you know what, we're going to go in a different direction, especially with 10 draft picks. And I think the cornerback class in the draft class is pretty good. So I wonder if Bradbury will be back here. I'm just trying to think. I don't see Carter in the long-term future. I don't see Zimenez in the long-term future. Dexter Lawrence, maybe? Would you say he's in the long-term future?
That's again. I mean, he'll definitely be here for at least a couple more years, and I think Lawrence will depend more on. I got to see who the GM is first and what his philosophy is. He may have a completely different philosophy than that of Dave Gettleman. Wouldn't be his guy, and maybe he doesn't value interior defensive linemen as much as Gettleman may. So Lawrence is tough for me to know one way or the other whether or not he's going to be in the long-term plans. I think for sure Leo obviously is going to be here for at least another 2 years. I think
Adore
to me,
too.
he's incredibly underappreciated by Giants fans. I say it all the time because I think a lot of Giants fans look at the contract and they're like, oh, he's not worth that money. There's, how many players in the NFL are not worth the money? That doesn't mean that he's not producing at a high level. He's a damn good player for the Giants. So I think Leonard Williams will definitely be here. Adoree Jackson, obviously, because of the contract, I think he'll be here for another 2 years. I think you hit it on the head with Bradbury. I would not be shocked if he's not back next year with the Giants because they would save $13 million if they cut him. And even if he is back next year, I don't think he'll be in the long-term plans. McKinney, absolutely. Azeez Ojulari, absolutely. That goes without saying. Definitely long-term. I am actually leaning on the side that they may cut Martinez, or they may extend him and make it a more cost-effective contract. I don't think they're going to go into next year having Blake Martinez take up $14 million on the cap, being that he's coming off the injuries and they could save $10 million if they cut him. They may work something out, though, that makes it more cost-effective for the team and maybe gives him a little bit more long-term stability, but not as much on a per-year basis. That's possible. We'll see. But, yeah, that's how I feel about the defense.
And then let's not forget Adoree Jackson because of the contract. He'll definitely be a part of that as well. So, all right, folks, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk Tampa Bay Giants Monday Night Football, and we'll continue to take as many questions as you guys submit as we can fit in. And if we don't get your questions in, I have Twitter Tuesday coming up. All right. So if you want to send your questions to me for Twitter Tuesday, I'm going to just plop on the email address on below there. That's where you can send them to me. I'll get to them if you send them to me, or you can tweet them to me if you want. Make sure you tag them Ask P Train, and I will answer as many of them as I can on Tuesday's show. I'm sorry, not Tuesday's show, Thursday's show. I'm saying Twitter Tuesday. I forgot Monday Night Football. So we got the review on Tuesday. We'll do Twitter Thursday. So you've got extra time to get your show in. All right. We'll be right back after this. Hey, Giant fans, BetOnline is back and better than ever before, offering a new web interface featuring more props, odds, and lines. Head to their updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use our promo code LOCKEDON. No matter what sport you're into, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers on BetOnline. BetOnline, where the game starts. Hey, Giant fans, have you checked out BuiltBar.com to see what they've got cooking over on their website with the latest flavors? Besides the 9 flavors that they normally offer, they're constantly rolling out different types of flavors in nut and nut-free variety. And if you're looking for a perfect snack that is low carb, low sugar, and high protein, Built Bar is it. It's also great tasting, covered in pure milk chocolate. So check them out today. And when you use our special promo code LOCKED15, you will save 15% off your first order. Again, that's LOCKED15, LOCKED15 at BuiltBar.com for 15% off your first order. All right, everybody, you've got a live edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. We're coming to you on Sunday because we have Monday Night Football, and I'm joined by DaEntertainah, the legend himself. Awesome. Enjoy talking with him. So glad to have him. So glad to have you guys and gals with us as well. And I hope you're enjoying the show. And Chris, we've got Monday Night Football. Let's take a look at some statistics here, or some rankings. Actually, we'll kick this off with let's see, we've got the Giants defense versus, actually, I'm just trying to see, and apologize. This is so tiny, and
I think on the left it's the Giants defense because I think they have 14 takeaways. Yeah.
Yes, this is what happens, folks, when you get old. I am supposed to wear reading glasses, and I refuse to wear them. So, but yeah, so we'll take a look at some stuff here, some statistics, and then I just want to show you one other graphic real quick. This is the other half of of where everybody ranks. Chris, when we're talking about the Bucs and the Giants, if you're putting together the offensive game plan, I mean, the Bucs have a pretty good run defense.
Yeah.
So I would think you're probably going to go heavy on the pass, I would think. But what would you do? What kind of tweaks would you put into to maybe, move the chains and get into the end zone? I mean, last year the Giants held up well, with the exception of, a couple plays here and there against the Bucs. What do they need to change from last year, and what can they do better?
Yeah, last year against the Bucs, it was actually, I thought, one of Daniel Jones' worst games of his career. He actually played really bad. The defense kept us in that game and played really well. Going into this game, I think the stats are a little bit misleading when I jumped into what the Bucs have done as of late as a defense. When you just look at their yearly totals, they're great against the run. I think they only surrendered 3.7 yards per carry, but their first 5 games this year, I think they only gave up like 200 yards on the ground total. Over the last 4 games, they've surrendered over 500 yards on the ground. So Maybe some of that has to do with Vita Vea out. I don't know. But I still think they're a strong run defense, but I don't think it's as strong as the stats may indicate. So I'm not going to completely abandon the run against this defense. Obviously, their primary weakness, though, is certainly in that secondary. The question I have is if Andrew Thomas is back, because you have to respect the Bucs pass rush. Are the New York Giants going to be able to hold up offensively to give Daniel Jones the time to throw the football? But you absolutely have to take shots down the field against a vulnerable secondary with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And like I said earlier, I would try to get Daniel Jones involved a little bit in the run game. Also, I think you need to take some shots between like the 50 and the 30. We know we struggle inside the red zone. So try to take some shots as you start to approach the 20-yard line, maybe from the 30, 35-yard line. Try to take some shots toward the end zone. Try to stretch that defense, but don't completely abandon the run game. You know, you look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did against them. They ran for -1 yards for the game, and they put the game completely on Jalen Hurts' back. You're not going to beat the Bucs doing that. You have to respect that pass rush. So you still have to remain somewhat balanced. But I agree with you in terms of their biggest weakness on their defense is certainly their secondary.
All right, and before I forget, let me just quick put the injury report for those who are asking about it. This is I don't want to call it the final injury report, but this is what we're looking at. Who's out for Tampa Bay, who's questionable, doubtful, and so on and so forth. Vita Vea, the run stuffer, is doubtful with the knee injury. I don't think he plays.
Yeah.
Let me see. They've got questionable. They've got one of their cornerbacks. I can't read what the name is. I'm sorry. It's too small for me. But
Antonio Brown is out.
Yes. Well, Antonio Brown's on offense, so we'll talk about him in
Okay.
just a sec. So they've got some guys who are banged up. And just real quick, here is the Giants injury report. A lot of questionables. You know, the big loss for the Giants, and we'll talk about, you know, when we in just a second, is Logan Ryan. So actually, let's talk about Giants defense versus the Bucs offense. Now, all week long, Tom Brady, great player, no doubt, future Hall of Famer. I think we can all agree on it, and just a master of just, you know, figuring things out. But what's interesting, and I did an article for Forbes on this actually. The Giants have played Brady kind of tightly, I think, with the exception of one game, and that I think was early on in his career. The games have been close with Brady, and I'm not talking about, you know, obviously the 2 Super Bowl wins, which we all know about. But I'm talking the regular season games. I think with the exception of one game, it's been like 7 points or less that the Giants have won, which I find interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've historically always played Brady tight. I think he's 4-1 against us in the regular season, but we always play him close. Obviously, we have the 2 Super Bowl wins. On the defensive side of the ball, we know how you get to Brady is the pass rush. You have to be able to get quick pressure on him, but you have to do it in the right way. If you send out all-out blitzes, he's going to pick you apart. He's too smart. He's too good with the pre-snap reads. I think Leonard Williams is going to be a huge, huge X factor in this game. They're going to have to be able to get pressure with the front 3 or the front 4, whatever it is. Obviously, you're going to have to blitz from time to time, but you can't get too blitz happy, similar to what they did against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think they're going to take a bend but don't break approach. I think they're going to try to hold them when they get inside the 20, and that's where they're going to have more of an opportunity to create some turnovers. And when I look at going into this game, how these two teams are trending, if the Giants are going to have any chance, it's going to be the turnovers. The Bucs, the last 4 games have been really sloppy. They've turned it over 7 times over their last 4 games. They only turned it over 5 times over their first 5 games, and 4 of them occurred in week 1 against Dallas. So they only turned it over 1 time between games 2 and 5, and they've turned it over 7 times over their last 4 games. And the Giants defense only have 14 turnovers created for the whole year, but they have 10 over their last 5 games and 2 in 4 of those contests. So to me, that's the biggest key to this game defensively, is finding a way to get extra possessions, finding a way to continue to do what you've been able to do against Pat Mahomes, what you were able to do against Dak Prescott. Even though we got killed, we did force 2 turnovers in that game. Continuing to do that as a defense and being smart with the football on the other side.
All right, now how big of an X factor is it that they don't have Logan Ryan? The Giants will probably not have Logan Ryan. And for those who missed it, Logan Ryan is in the reserve COVID protocol, tested positive, I believe, on his second test. So unless he produces 2 negative tests within a 24-hour period, which is still a possibility, a slim possibility, he will not play in Monday night's game. How big of a loss is that, do you think, Chris?
Yeah, Logan Ryan being out is, I think it's more of a loss than him He's still going to be there though, but in terms of on the sideline. But I think his biggest contribution to this team on the field is being a veteran leader, right? He's probably the leader of this defense. He's a captain of the team. In terms of his production this year, I think it's replaceable. I don't think he's been incredible. I think Julian Love could step in and play satisfactory football at the position. But I think where they're going to miss him most is in terms of his veteran leadership on the field.
Absolutely, and you bring up a good point about Julian Love. He's kind of the guy that you kind of forget about until you have to acknowledge he's there. But he's been solid. I mean, again, not great, but if you're talking about production, probably can do much of what Logan does in terms of the scheme. I would think.
Yeah, his nickname's duct tape, right? I think that's what
Yeah,
Judge said before the and I actually said going into the year I thought Julian Love was a very valuable player on this team, even though he wasn't slated to get many snaps because his nickname says duct tape. He could fill in so many different scenarios. If you get an injury, he could play some slot, he could play safety. He's even displayed he could play outside against the Cowboys last year. I think Julian Love could step in and at least play satisfactory. I don't think he's going to embarrass us at that position.
I agree. All right, now, so what are your three keys to this game?
First key is turnovers. Like I said, that's by far the biggest key for me. If the Giants are going to stand any chance, they're going to have to win the turnover battle. And they're probably going to have to win it by 2. And I think they can. I think it's possible, especially with the way the Bucs have played as of late in terms of how sloppy they've been with the football. And the fact, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this, I think Patrick Graham is brilliant. I really do. I think he's a really smart guy. You gave him 2 weeks to prepare for this game because they had a bye. And they have some familiarity with Tom Brady, being that Graham and obviously Joe Judge was part of the New England Patriots coaching staff, and they did a really good job scheming against him last year. So I do think Patrick Graham is going to come with a really good game plan, and I do expect the Giants to have some opportunities to create some turnovers against this Bucs offense. But that, to me, is by far the biggest key in this game. The second biggest key is going to be scoring when we get inside the 20, and that, to me, is going to be one of the 3 biggest keys every week because we've been so bad at it. We're 32nd in the league in terms of percentage. We were 31st last year. Going up against Tom Brady, you cannot settle for threes. You have to find a way to punch it into the red zone. So to me, that's going to be the second biggest key. And as far as the third biggest key, it's going to be, I suppose, Andrew Thomas coming back and holding up on that left side, being that blindside protector that we saw over the first 4 weeks. Because if he's able to do that, I think it changes the complete dynamic of this offense.
Yeah, and a quick note about Andrew Thomas. Earlier in the week, I didn't think he would make it back, but as the week went on, started to trend upward. Now I'm just revising that. I think he will be activated. Now, will he necessarily go 80 snaps or so forth? That I'm not so sure on. I wonder if they might do a rotation because you're talking from ramping up a guy who's been on IR for 3 weeks, at least 3 weeks, and then you throw in the bye week. I don't know if there's wisdom in ramping him up and going from 0 to 100, but I feel better about, especially having seen what I saw this week in practice and maybe, getting him on the field and getting him, start acclimating him so that he can get in there because the Giants have some big games coming up starting this week, obviously, but they have the Eagles, which is a division game. And that's where you've got to start making hay. They've got, I think they've got Miami, Dallas, and then,
Chargers.
I'm sorry, Chargers. I forgot that. And then Dallas. And then you start getting into the division games. You want all your guys hitting on full cylinder as we get into this stretch run here. I saw a comment on the show. Somebody said, well, playoffs, they're not going to run the table. No, I don't think they're going to run the table. But I do think there are some winnable games here that, given how crowded it is at the bottom of the NFC, I wouldn't yet rule out
I agree
a
with you.
wild card for this team. I know it's a long shot. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but right now the math, they're still in it. They're still in it. They're
I'm going to tell you right
despite how
now,
they're
Pat,
playing.
if they win this week, which I'm not picking them, I'm picking
Right,
the
me neither.
if they win this week. People are going to call me a homer on my channel because I will be picking them to go to the playoffs. Because the 7th seed in the NFC is, like you said, incredibly vulnerable. None of those teams scare me. I had the Giants going 9-8 before the year started, and I had them at 4-6 after 10 games because I look at those final 7 games, and I do think they could win at least 4, at least. And I think there's an opportunity to win 5. The
Yeah.
Chicago Bears are bad. Justin Fields does not scare me. The Miami Dolphins are bad. The Washington football team without Chase Young are bad. and that game is going to mean nothing for them. So if it means something for the Giants, which we don't know if it will, the last game of the year, who knows where we could go. So the Chargers even don't look as hot as they once did. So I do think there's an opportunity for the Giants to win at least 4 or 5 games after this Bucs game. So if they could ever find a way to win this game, which I'm not predicting, I do think they stand a legitimate chance to win at least 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. We actually over on Giants country came up with what we called it charting a path to the playoffs, and I'll put the URL up there. But Coach Gene Clemens, who I've had on the show before, he actually broke it down where he thinks the Giants can win, and I think he forecasted a 9-8 record. But that's why you line up and you play the game every week. Sometimes they're going to steal a win. Sometimes they're going to blow a game that they should win. But let's close out the show. We got a couple more questions I want to get in before we call it a show here. So let's get some of those questions in here. This one comes from. Okay,
Adam.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, this one. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong one.
Oh, okay.
There was a question from Spain. Here it is. I'm sorry. From regards from Spanish fans, why do you think Mara doesn't want to go to international games? Does he want to focus on the local market? Vamos Gigantes! Let's go Giants! Right? I see my 4 years in Spanish in high school paid off. I think part of the thing is not so much that he doesn't want to. I think it's just kind of it takes a lot of logistics and planning to get the team over. And some coaches, I think, are fussy about, disrupting the routine to make the long plane ride. Now, I can tell you what the Giants are going to do, and I don't know if this is out there yet, but I've gotten confirmation on it. After the Giants play Miami, they're not coming back to Jersey. They're going right out to Tucson, Arizona.
Really?
Yes.
That's
So they're
interesting.
going to Tucson, Arizona. They're going to spend a few days out there, and then they're going to go on to Los Angeles for their game against the Chargers. The idea behind that, according to a source, is to help them get acclimated to the time zone difference. Rather than flying back to New Jersey.
I actually think that's a really smart idea.
Yeah, I think I do too. It's similar to what they did, I think, where they went out early last year when they had to play Seattle and some other West Coast games. And I believe what the plan is, obviously, they're going to play the game and then they're going to fly back the next day, because I think that next weekend, if I'm not mistaken, don't they have Dallas after the Chargers?
I think so, yes.
So that's
Yeah,
a big division game. So just a little tweak that Joe Judge is looking to make there in the schedule to keep guys rested, to make sure that they're not sluggish when they go out there. So I thought that was interesting. But I'm getting off topic with the question. I think that has something to do with it, because it does take a lot out of you to travel. I used to travel every week. And it sucks the life out of you, because you're leaving on a Saturday, you do the game, which is a long day. Then you've got to fly back. In my case, I was flying back Monday or the day after the game, whenever the game was. And it just, I wasn't, and I wasn't playing. I wasn't running around there, but I didn't feel myself until like Wednesday of the following week. So I can understand why the Giants might be reluctant to play overseas.
Yeah. Before I just see Albin. I just want to respond to his comment. Albin, I said if they win this week, if they lose this week, I don't think I don't think we have any chance. If they win this week, I could see a legitimate shot at being able to at least contend to make the playoffs. But as far as the overseas question, is that even up to the Giants in terms of when they get to play in London, or I don't even think it is.
I think the way it works is it depends. Like if it's Giants home game, then I do think the Giants have a say in it.
Do they?
But if
Okay.
it's a road game, I think it's up to the home team more so. I mean, the road team does get something of a say, but you know, I've always gotten the impression the Giants just don't want the added, the extras and stuff. And I'm not saying it would be a huge distraction, but it does take a lot out of you. I went to the very first international game when the Giants played Miami in
Yeah.
London, and let me tell, I had a blast, but the travel was a pain in the tush.
Of course.
I'm not gonna lie. And I get it. Coming off of an international game, you get a bye week. but I don't know. That would be my guess. I mean, I don't want to speak for the Giants. Obviously, you want the other Pat speaking for the Giants, Pat Hanlon, but that would just be my guess if I
I have a
had a
question for you. I'm assuming
sure.
like you said, you've traveled with the team, so you've been in a lot of the visiting team stadiums. And which one is your favorite that you've been to?
Oh gosh, where do I start? Well, actually, let me clarify something. I don't travel on the team charter. I travel when I say I travel with the team, I mean I traveled wherever they went. So let me
Right.
just clarify that. So nobody back in the day, reporters did actually travel on the charter. That stopped way before I came onto the scene. But my favorite stadiums, I like Seattle. I like Tampa Bay. Um, I let me see what else did I like. Arizona was pretty good. Trying to think what else.
Did
I
you go to
like Baltimore.
the new Cowboys?
Cowboys, yep, the new stadium there is everything it's cracked up to be. Some of the worst ones I don't like. I'm not a fan of the link for Philly. I'm not a big fan at all at Washington. I try to avoid Washington whenever I can.
FedEx Field.
Oh,
When you went to the link, did you wear your Giants hat?
no, well, we're not supposed to wear any kind of, stuff, but it's funny. The last time I went to the link, I had a black coat on, and it was wintertime. I think it was a cold day, and I had my black wool coat on. And the Eagle fans, oh my gosh, they were not very polite. Let's put it to you that way.
No, I'm
I'm
sure.
sure there's polite fans there. I don't want to
There's like
bash the Eagle
three. There's
fans.
like three.
I don't want to bash them, but the group that I encountered, they were not very nice, and they were just making lewd comments, and I'm like, and I ignored it. I just kept walking and doing my thing, but it wasn't a very pleasant experience.
Can we
And
sweep
again,
them this year? Can we please sweep them this year?
that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Oh,
That would really, really be nice. But all right, let's take a couple more questions and then we'll wrap this up. Speaking of Auburn, would you draft an edge and an offensive line or double up on the O line? I think I would do an edge and an O line. What do you think, Chris?
I think it depends on where we're picking, and it depends, on what players are there when we pick. But I would be completely fine with either scenario, whether it be edge O line edge, double O line. I'm completely fine with all three scenarios. But I think the Giants really need to make that the focal point of this year's draft. I think going into the draft, for me, at least the way I feel right now, the first 3 rounds, I don't want to see anything but O-line, edge, and maybe middle linebacker. That's it. I don't want to see a safety. I don't want to see a wide receiver. I don't want to see a running back. I want you to fix the most important areas of a football team, and that's protecting your quarterback, and that's getting after the quarterback as well. Obviously, a cornerback, maybe being that, Bradbury's not going to be your long-term is a possibility as well. But in the first round, to me, it's either edge or offensive lineman. I'd be completely fine with all three scenarios.
I would too, but I definitely think edge and O line have to be day one, day two picks.
Yeah, for
No
sure.
question about it.
For
No
sure.
question about it. All right, and then let's do one more, and then we will wrap this one up. And again, folks, if you didn't get your questions answered, send them in to me. I will answer them on Thursday. I'll do a no. Actually, you know what? I keep messing up the schedule. Monday Night Football does this to me. Thursday is my crossover show. I will do a Q&A show probably. You know what? How about we do it on Wednesday? I know I keep going back and forth, and I apologize. I keep forgetting Monday Night Football, and then Thursday I have my crossover show. That's why I hate Monday Night Football. That and plus we're up so darn late. But all right, one more question here. Um, let me just get the next one up. Let's see. I think here we go. Let's get this one up here. JC Silver wants to know our game predictions against Tampa Bay. Chris, I'll let you go first.
Giants, I think, are 11-point underdogs.
10
Rather,
and a half was the last line I saw.
what was it?
10 and a half.
10.5. So it went down a little bit. I think it was
Yeah, a
12
little
at the
bit.
beginning of the week, if I'm not mistaken. I think the line's a little high. I do think the Giants. I'm picking the Bucs, but I do think the Giants will keep it closer than what Vegas thinks. I think it'll be between 3 and 7 points. I think the defense keeps the Bucs somewhat in check. So maybe my score is a little bit lower than most people may think. I'm going to go like 24-20 Bucs. I think the Giants will stay competitive, but the Bucs will win.
I'm gonna go Bucks 30, Giants 24. I I would not bet the spread here. I would not take the points with the Bucs here. But I do think the Giants can keep this competitive because they do play Tom Brady tight. They are getting healthier on offense, which is a big, big, I think, reason why the point spread might have gone down a little bit. The Bucs are banged up on defense. I think the Giants, I think something's going to happen because it always seems to happen. And the Giants just don't do well in primetime games. I don't know why that is, but
I know
I'm
why.
going to pick the Bucs, and I'm going to, but not by much. And P.S. I don't think that's the end of the Giants season if they lose to the Bucs, but you know, if they win, boy, we're going to have some week on our respective shows this
Oh, if
week.
they win,
Oh man.
it'll be like us beating Seattle last year, where you got hope for the rest of the season. So it's gonna be a really
Yeah.
fun game. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the challenge. In terms of the primetime games, I think the reason that they usually lose is on primetime. You usually play a really good opponent, and in recent years, the Giants have not been good. and I said it before the year started. When I looked at the schedule, I'm like, wow, the NFL just hates the Giants. Our two main primetime games outside of the Thursday night game against Washington were against the two teams that were in the Super Bowl the year before. So I'm like, wow, they really want to embarrass this football team. But I think we'll be up for the task, though. I think not that we're going to win, but I do think we'll have a good showing. And I believe in this defense. I believed in it at the beginning of the year. I lost faith after 4 or 5 weeks because, part of me was second guessing the way I felt about him coming in because I was like, well, maybe they weren't as good as we thought last year when they were going up against those backup quarterbacks, so on and so forth. But the way the defense has played the last 3 or 4 weeks, I do believe in this defense. I do think they're starting to improve. They're not going to shut out the Bucs, but I think they'll keep us in the game. I think they'll create a couple of turnovers, and I think it'll be a competitive game.
Absolutely. All right. Folks, that is going to do it for us on the live show because we know you got some Sunday football to watch if you're watching us live. And if you're listening to us, we hope you enjoyed the show. We thank everybody who tuned in, who sent in questions. And again, from the LockedOn Giants perspective, if I didn't get to your question today, send it in. You can send it to email. Here's the information below at lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. Tuesday, we're doing the wrap up show from Monday Night Football. Wednesday, I'll probably do the mailbag on Wednesday. Thursday's my crossover, and then Friday to be determined. So that's going to be the schedule this week. I know it's kind of a crazy week, but that's what we'll do. If you want to check out my good friend Chris DaEntertainah's channel, here's the information where you can find him. He is on YouTube. You can also follow him on Twitter, which I recommend you do if you're not already doing. Excellent guest, excellent football guy. He also talks Knicks and what other sports do you talk? You talk all the New York sports, Rangers
Yeah, I
too,
mean,
right?
I would say my channel's like 85 to 90% Giants, probably about 8% Knicks, and then like a sprinkle of Mets. Unfortunately, when I was a child, I say it all the time, I was dropped on my head, and I chose to pick the Mets over the Yankees, and and it's been torture. But yeah, I'm a diehard Mets fan as well. But I talk mainly Giants and a little bit of Knicks.
Well, I'm a Mets fan too, believe it or not. And
What do you
you
think
know,
of what do you think of the whole Noah Syndergaard thing?
uh, man, do the Mets have a direction? Seriously, do they have a direction?
I I thought for sure when we got Steve Cohen, we were all celebrating in the streets. We're like, this,
I know.
and we'll see. I still have faith that we're gonna become a consistent baseball team. The Syndergaard thing, I can't really blame on the Mets though. He was coming off with 2 injuries. They offered him the qualifying offer. But from what Syndergaard said is, I think he said he didn't believe in upper management. That's why he didn't even give the Mets an opportunity to match the offer. It is what it is. It's unfortunate, but yeah, it just seems like what can go wrong for the Mets will go wrong. That's the way it always.
Yes. They're
always
cursed. I'm starting to believe that they're cursed.
but when
Maybe
it finally works out, it's gonna feel good.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait for that too. I mean, my poor dad, before he died, he's like, "Geez, you think I'll ever see the Mets get to the World Series again?" I said, "I don't know, Dad. They don't seem to have a direction." And, then the new ownership came in and I was optimistic and, well, I'll give them time. Look, like I said at the top of the show, I'm patient as for the
Yeah,
most part. So
you have to be
maybe a
if you're a
little
Mets
too
fan.
patient, but
If you're a
all
Mets
right,
fan, you gotta be
folks.
as patient as they come.
Yeah. All right, folks. Great stuff as always from Christy Entertainer. Check him out. Be sure you keep it here on Locked on Giants. And also check me out on Giants Country. That's where you can find all my written work. We have plenty of stuff coming up. We'll have a live blog tomorrow with stats, facts, and interesting stuff from the game. Hope you'll check it out. For Chris, DaEntertainah, my name is Patricia Traina, and have a great rest of your weekend and an upcoming week.